on her exclusive interview with General Milley. Jennifer.
John, it's midnight here at Ramstein. I spent the day with General Milley as he thanked the troops who built the massive evacuation processing centers on the runways here behind me, and thanked and greeted Afghans and SIVs and translators, including his own translator, a translator who worked for him 17 years ago, who he hadn't seen since then, who caught one of the last flights out of Kabul. You saw some of the security measures being taken today. Are you comfortable that enough vetting is being done here before these evacuees are brought to the U.S.?
I am. I talked to the Customs and Border Patrol. I talked to the FBI that was here, the DHS folks that were here, along with all the other interagencies. A lot of interagency here. State Department, USAID, and a lot of people have different roles. So I talked to the security folks. You saw it. So what they're doing, as people come in, they're getting their names registered, they're doing the biometrics, they check their irises, they do their fingerprints, they take a full facial photo. They run that against the 20 years of databases that we have in the interagency. They run it against the NCTC checks and the FBI checks. If the individual, if the evacuee has some sort of derogatory information or something suspect at all, it'll pop up as red or yellow. They've popped about 30,000 or so people through here. They processed about 30,000 people through here, and they've had, I think they said a couple of hundred or something like that have popped red. Once the individual comes out as red, something is up. Then they go into an individual room and they start interviewing with FBI, CID, NCIS, those sorts of folks. And then they work through whatever the issues were. In many of the cases, they end up getting cleared. In others, we have to take further measures. But I'm very comfortable that these folks are being properly cleared through the FBI.
And they're being checked about 3 times before with their biometrics before they even get to the U.S.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, 77% of Americans say that they are in favor of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, the end of the war.
Yeah.
But 74% say they are not happy with how the withdrawal went. Could the withdrawal have been done better? Was it military planning that caused the people to not feel that the withdrawal was as it should have been?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is the collapse of the Afghan army happened at a much faster rate and very unexpected by pretty much everybody. And then with that is the collapse of the Afghan government. So that was definitely a surprise. But I will say that there was an awful lot of planning done, rock drills, rehearsals, etc. And what you saw unfold with this non-combatant evacuation operation was one of the contingency plans. And the speed at which it was executed, the flow of the aircraft, we had planes taking off every 30 to 45 minutes or so. We brought in 7,000 or 6,000 U.S. troops, and then there was about 1,000 more or so Afghan troops that secured HKIA. The first day was clearly chaotic, no question about it. You saw that on video, etc. But within about 24 hours, that settled down and it became a much more orderly process. The security of HKIA was challenging, to say the least, and we saw the bombing. But that would have happened no matter where it was. People talk about Bagram, wherever there's a perimeter. If there's no outside force, if there's no Afghan force securing it, and there wasn't any, then it's going to be U.S. forces on the perimeter, on the edge, and they were doing what they were asked to do, which is go out and screen and process people. So there's a lot of lessons learned, and I think we're going to go through that in a very systematic way. I know we are on the Joint Staff. I know Central Command will, and I'm sure the other departmental agencies will. From a military standing point, though, military planning standpoint, I think US 4A under Scotty Miller, Central Command under Frank McKenzie, those plans were done in detail. They were back-briefed, rehearsed. They were done through all the cabinet members were present at these rock drills, these interagency rock drills that were done, hosted by Secretary Austin at the Pentagon, all coordinated, all briefed up, all the way through all the senior officials. There was an extensive amount of planning in this. The whole idea of Bagram, for example, and securing Bagram, and whether it's Bagram or Kia, that kind of thing, people should go back and take a look at the type force that we had, the 2,500 troops. Those are advisors. Those weren't infantry battalions. Those are advisors. And in order to secure Bagram, you need, roughly speaking, about a brigade. So you need about a battalion to secure the 72 towers at our Bagram. You got entrances, you got QRFs, you have an outer ring perimeter security that you have to do patrols. That's about another battalion. So right off the bat, that's 3 battalions. Then if you're going to be north of Kabul by whatever it is, 60 kilometers or so, you got a battalion that's going to have to secure that corridor. You're looking at, roughly speaking, about 5,000 or 6,000 additional troops on top of what it would take to secure Kaya. And when the president made his decision in April, we had to change a mission. And that mission was very clear. It was to take the force down to 0 by the end of the summer, by 31 August, and to provide military forces to protect the embassy as a bridging solution until a contract solution was in, because the president's intent was to keep the embassy going, and to help the Turks secure Kaya. To secure the embassy, to secure Kaya, was about a 750-person, maybe a little bit less than 1,000 military mission, and that was basically a troop cap. So you could not, with the conditions that existed and the constraints and restraints of the mission, you couldn't secure Bagram. And then the question is, for what? Why would you secure Bagram? And the issue was, of course, to do the NEO, right? We got 124,000 people out of Kiev. So the flow, the volume was never an issue. And in fact, you got more people out of Kiev than you would have ever got out of Bagram, because they would have had to go from Kabul north 60 miles, 60 kilometers. So the planning was extensive. Those were actually thought out options. There were various branches and sequels to all of these things. And the other thing was a permissive environment. We had a government, you had an army. When the government and the army fell apart, then you're into a different contingency, which was the NEO. And that was called, and we brought in the forces to do it.
How many troops would you have needed to retake Bagram, as some people had suggested? How many troops would have needed, and what would the Taliban have taken that to mean?
Well, if we went in and retook Bagram, if that were to happen, if that decision were ever made, we had contingencies to do that, by the way, and those were briefed. But that's a significant troop commitment, number one. You're looking at 18th Airborne Corps. You're probably looking at 10,000 or more additional forces. And then you're going to have to secure Bagram, you're going to have to clear Kabul, and you're going to have to secure Kiev. So your total, you're looking somewhere in the range of 15,000 to 20,000 additional forces. And most importantly, you would reinitiate a war with the Taliban, which of course we could do, but that's what would have happened. So you would have been fighting ISIS and the Taliban, and with all the casualties, etc. I know a lot of people are talking about it, but I wonder if the support would have been there, had that been done, had that decision been made. I personally think the military conditions did not warrant that. I think the military conditions warranted what we did.
And when you saw the Taliban sweeping across various districts, why wasn't the decision taken to halt the withdrawal at that point, when it seemed like these were dominoes falling?
You're talking about the withdrawal of 2,500? Because that's what we're talking about. So those 2,500, you have to separate the 2,500 from the NEO. The NEO are infantry battalions, special operations forces that are coming in specifically designed and tailored. The special purpose MAGTF, the ARGMU guys, and the 82nd Airborne units. Those are different type units. That 2,500 that drew down, those are advisors. Those weren't the kind of guys that do NEOs. So those are two different operations. One is the withdrawal of the forces, which we were directed to withdraw under the permissive conditions that existed in the late spring, early summer. And that's a retrograde of forces. We had to close 11 camps. We had to transfer those camps to the Afghan security forces, etc. So that's one option, one operation. The second operation is the NEO. And the NEO then is triggered by a series of deteriorating conditions that occur in late July and early August. And then the ambassador, NEOs are always triggered by the decision of an ambassador. Ambassador Wilson requested that a NEO be conducted on 12 August.
Is the U.S. safer today since the U.S. has withdrawn from Afghanistan?
Well, this is something that I've thought a lot about. And I personally think that my military estimate is that the conditions are likely to develop of a civil war. I don't know if the Taliban is going to be able to consolidate power and establish governance. They may be, maybe not. But I think there's at least a very good probability of a broader civil war. And that will then in turn lead to conditions that could, in fact, lead to a reconstitution of al-Qaeda or a growth of ISIS or other myriad of terrorist groups. So I think the short answer to your question is we don't know yet, but the conditions are very likely, in my opinion, that, and I've testified this and I've said it in public, that you could see a resurgence of terrorism coming out of that general region within 12, 24, 36 months. And we're going to monitor that. Now, the challenge for us now, for the military and the CIA and the intelligence services, is we've got to execute what people have referred to as over-the-horizon counterterrorism activity. That will be more difficult than having bases on the ground, but it is possible to do it. We're going to have to maintain very, very intense levels of indicators and warnings and observation and ISR over that entire region. We'll have to reestablish some human intelligence networks, etc. And then as opportunities present themselves, we'll have to continue to conduct strike operations if there's a threat to the United States. Those are decisions to be made later, but right now we'll be in the developmental stage of developing the intelligence picture.
Do you see a situation where U.S. troops will have to return to Afghanistan?
I think that would be a very difficult policy choice. I wouldn't say yes or no to anything, actually. I think it's too early to say anything like that at this point. But right now we need to continue to monitor the intelligence situation, and we need to continue to see if these terrorist organizations that threaten the United States are going to develop or not.